Hi friends, if you missed it, I did the adulting. The adulting being the whole reason this episode is late, right? I know it looks like I've been MIA, especially if you're only on YouTube, but that's totally not true because I posted my thoughts on Rebel Moon and Leave the World Behind. They are podcast exclusive episodes, so I can see how it looks. But if you'd like to listen to those episodes, please join me on the podcast. If you're listening or watching this episode on YouTube, I'll leave a link for both episodes in the description below. Now that that's all out of the way, we can talk about the movie I enjoyed. Because I'm a millennial? Hello, it is me again, your movie friend. Welcome back. New friends and besties, I'm here as a friend to give you my spoiler-free thoughts on the latest movie I've watched in theaters or at home. If you're looking for my thoughts on a specific movie, DM me on Instagram, let me know on the podcast or in the comments section on YouTube. Tune in for a new episode every Friday. Don't forget to follow the podcast, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Instagram so you don't miss out on what I'm watching and what we're going to be talking about. If you've been hanging out with me for a while, then you might have picked up on this already. Maybe I've mentioned it before. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it before. If I haven't or you don't know, I'm a millennial, and honestly, I don't think about it much. I'm too busy with life to think about it. That said, I was really surprised when I was talking with a coworker and we ended up talking about movies, and she asked, I think it was what I'd seen recently, or she asked if I'd seen it, but I told her I watched Argylle and I enjoyed the movie. And she basically said something like, given the premise of the movie, that makes sense because I'm a millennial. I mean, I'm not offended. I just didn't think there was any relevance. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's get into today's episode on Argylle. Is it an enjoyable movie or am I just a millennial? Reclusive author Ellie Conway writes best-selling espionage novels about a secret agent named Argylle who's on a mission to unravel a global spy syndicate. However, when the plots of her book start to mirror the covert actions of a real-life spy organization, the line between fiction and reality begin to blur. That question I asked, is this movie enjoyable or am I just a millennial, might be an easy answer, but I'm still going to talk about the movie and we'll get back to the question later in the episode. I like the story. Author that writes spy novels gets pulled into the very world that she writes about. I think the concept is interesting, and while it isn't something new that we haven't seen before, it's a fun idea that's executed very well. One thing I really like about this movie are the twists. And I love me a good twist that I don't see coming. That's the key. It's gotta be a surprise, otherwise it's boring, and this movie did not fall into that. It was predictable, I was still having a good time, but I guessed the twist. And when it was revealed, I felt it was too obvious. At that point in the movie, I was ready to check out mentally and just eat the popcorn and enjoy the action and the acting, but then another twist happened. Oh yeah, this movie is twisty, and what really got me was the fact that I really thought I had it figured out and was ready to be done with it. The twists kept me engaged and made the movie even better. Now, I like to keep the first section of the episodes for the more positive notes, but I can't talk about the action sequences without mentioning how some of these moments are ridiculous and not in a good way. So the director, Matthew Vaughn, is a name you might be familiar with, but if you're not, then you might recognize his films like the Kingsman movies. He's directed a lot of other movies, including Kick-Ass, but I was really looking to the Kingsman movies in terms of flair, style, and most importantly, music, which we'll talk about later in the episode. Getting back on track, my point is that over-the-top action or unrealistic action isn't something that I find off-putting personally, but there's something about knowing what's going to happen and physically putting your face in your hands because there is no way they're actually doing it. If you saw the movie, it was the scene with was it oil? If I'm remembering it right. It's been a minute since I saw the movie, but if you know, you know. Anyway, I do like the idea, the context, it's fun, but the CGI and the dialogue was just so bad. Aside from this scene, I really enjoyed the action overall. It's fun, and I've said this before, I really like when action sequences highlight who the character is. I'll get into the acting soon, but I love how Bryce Dallas Howard's Ellie is obviously that fish out of water character and how she interacts with the world she's pulled into and led through by Sam Rockwell's Aiden. throughout the movie we're shown who these two characters are, but I particularly like the action because it's more high stakes and it makes for hilarious moments between the two characters. Speaking of Bryce, I love an article that I came across that talks about her body. Now, I want to say that I don't think we should have articles about women's bodies. I don't think we should have to be talking about women's bodies because every body is beautiful and that should be the standard. The reality is, it's not. So these conversations, these interviews, and articles are so important. That's why I did want to put this into the episode and we are going to talk about it. According to an interview she did with Time, she said to the director, Matthew Vaughn, quote, "I just want you to know that this is my body, and if you want my body to be smaller, I think you should hire someone else," end quote. And he responds, "No, I'm hiring you because of you." I love this so much, and I think it's extremely important because as the article says, a beautiful, smart, non-sample size woman in a $200 million action movie by a major director should not be that rare in 2024. But it is. And if you, like me, are wondering what a non-sample size woman is, don't worry, I've got you. According to the article, sometimes in the fashion industry, Bryce's body type, the average body type, most people's body type, would be considered not sample size. Sample sizes start at 4 and go down from there. As a curvier woman myself, I love this representation and I love that in the movie. Her full figure isn't a joke, and the article says she's just who she is. She wears sexy gowns and clingy jeans and gets the soft lighting treatment the same as any romantic lead would. I love this so much. And if you want to read the article yourself, it really has more information and I linked it in the description. Moving on to the acting, and we're just going to keep talking about Bryce Dallas Howard because she's amazing. As Ellie Conway, she is stunning. She's so easy to connect with and she's so endearing. Bryce does an incredible job in the role and her capabilities as an actress really shine through more and more as the film progresses. The cast overall is fantastic. Catherine O'Hara really stood out for me personally with her performance. I really love the mother-daughter chemistry she has with Bryce throughout the film. Speaking of chemistry, I actually really enjoyed Sam Rockwell as Aiden, and I also really liked his chemistry with Bryce. There is a lot of nuance there, especially with their differences, again, the whole fish out of water trope, but that was what really elevated their chemistry in my opinion. All right, so what did I think about the movie? Is it worth watching? Am I just a millennial? Let's get into it. This is a fun, romantic, thrilling spy movie, and it's not trying to be more than that. I love the storyline, I love the twists, and the acting is fantastic. But I would wait for this one to stream or at least watch it on a discounted day at your local theater because it wasn't all good. I had a few issues with the movie that really bothered me throughout. The dialogue was really weird. What I felt was like fast traveling from location to location. The music and some, I would say like high tension scenes were given away in the trailer. From time to time, the dialogue was giving streaming film or low quality in terms of writing. What I'm trying to say is I do love some movies that have gone straight to streaming and personally have felt like some of them should have actually been released in theaters. What I'm trying to say is I have no problem with straight to streaming movies. Finally, fast travel and the music. I felt like when going from location to location, there were some transitions that felt so sudden or quick in terms of pacing. I just felt like there was a scene that was missing. Now, the music. Honestly, I was expecting a lot, especially because like we talked about earlier, the director is behind the Kingsman movies, which have fantastic music. At least I think so anyway. I even like the song that they used in the trailer for Argylle. I was expecting a similar flair to the soundtrack. Some scenes did have music that was just fine, but had they gone with a different song, it could have completely elevated the scene. Please keep in mind that this is all my opinion and I can easily see any of these points being a non-issue to someone. What bothers me might not bother you the same, and that's totally fine. Have you seen Argylle yet? If you saw the movie, what did you think about it? I do want to say that when you watch the movie, if you haven't watched it yet, if you plan on watching it, just manage your expectations. I think based on the trailer, some people expected John Cena and Henry Cavill to be in the movie more. Personally, I didn't feel that way, but I did rewatch the trailer and I can see how that might be the case. I would say don't expect them much at all. They all did great though. Henry Cavill has a fantastic presence as Argylle. John Cena, we couldn't even see, so was he even there? And Dula Peep. So I will say, I honestly just expected her to be there and look good. And she nailed it. I think if you're expecting more, especially from the three of them specifically, you will be disappointed. Now, back to that question, you guys. Am I just a millennial or is this a good movie? I am just a millennial, but this is also a good movie. If you manage your expectations and know that the CGI is also crazy from time to time, then this movie is pretty awesome. Again, it's romantic, it's thrilling, and it's fun. Maybe it's a little cheesy and sometimes the jokes are bad, but maybe that's part of the charm. All right, secret agents, that brings us to the end of the episode. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you very much. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the description below for a link to the podcast. And please consider leaving this episode a thumbs up. As always, thank you so much for hanging out with me and for catching today's episode. You can listen to a new episode every Friday. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, and follow me on Instagram so you don't miss the next movie we're going to be talking about. I definitely watched Madame Web. I'm going to be honest, I thought about refunding my tickets, especially after everything I was seeing on TikTok, but there was no way. I had to watch this movie for myself. And I did. And I posted a poll on the community tab again to see what you guys wanted me to talk about first. Since this episode was late, I wasn't sure which one to talk about. The poll had a few votes, and at the time of writing this episode, it was at 50-50 between Madame Web and Argylle. I totally finished both. So if you'd like to know my thoughts on Madame Web, you can check that episode out wherever you are listening. If you're on YouTube, you can click the top right corner. And if you're listening on the podcast, that episode is already posted. I have tickets for Demon Slayer, and since it's just episodes of the anime, we already know 10 out of 10, we don't need to talk about it. That will free up my next week to talk about Out of Darkness. I did watch that movie the same weekend I watched Madame Web, so that one will be posted next week. And you guys, I have to say, things last weekend in terms of movies was rough, so I will be happy for what comes next. Dune Part 2. You guys. So I watched Dune when it came out and there was a lot there. I'm definitely going to have to rewatch that one. But you know what I do know? We're getting Florence Pugh. And if you know, then you know. And if you don't, I like monsters, creatures, all that kind of stuff. So I'm ready to see more sandworms. Also, I'm ready to see more Zendaya because the last movie, I feel like we all got. She was not in it as much as I think we all thought she was going to be in it. Things are getting better and better. Well, hopefully, because this can go sideways really fast. Kung Fu Panda 4. I honestly cannot wait to rewatch all the Kung Fu Panda movies and talk to you guys about the fourth installment and the franchise as a whole, because honestly, it's one of my favorites. Lastly, for now, Imaginary. That movie releases the same day as Kung Fu Panda 4, and honestly, I don't have tickets for it yet. I just saw a trailer on YouTube while I was eating dinner, and it said the tickets were on sale. My local theater hasn't posted them for sale yet, but I can see the show times. So as soon as they do go on sale, I'm getting them because the movie looks really interesting, though I'm a little wary, you know? The PG-13 rating makes me nervous every time. So I hope you'll join me on YouTube and the podcast, especially for those podcast exclusive episodes. The last podcast exclusives were Rebel Moon and Leave the World Behind. I would love to hear from you guys, so please let me know your thoughts on today's episode or just your thoughts on the movie we talked about today in the comment section on YouTube or the Q&A and poll on Spotify. I want to know what you think, so let me know wherever you're listening or watching, Spotify, YouTube, or Instagram at a.rocket.review, and I'll talk to you next week. But until the next episode, spread positivity, be safe, take care of yourself, and I don't care what anyone says, the whirly bird POV is the funniest thing I've seen in a very long time. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.